everybody, Peter here from the Esoteric Order of Gamers, and welcome! Today I'm going to look at a game called Ryozen. It's by Tabula Games, who make some absolutely lovely stuff. I really enjoyed this early game of theirs called Miss Thea. They've also made Ikaion, which was in the same kind of weird fantasy universe. And most recently we had Sons of Faeriel, which is also really fascinating. They make really nice games. And this one here is probably a little bit more simpler, a little bit more geared to a wider audience than those quite complex Euro games. Still, there's a lot going on. It's an interesting game with a lovely theme. And I'm going to tell you how it plays and then tell you what I think about it. Now, first I thought I'll look up that word because I'm not sure if it's a made-up word or a real one or not. It is used in Japan, I think, because it is the name of a museum in Kyoto in Japan, but it doesn't seem to be used for anything else. If you take the two parts of it, it's sort of like restful meditation or something like that. That's my guess. If you're a Japanese watcher, please correct me if I've got that wrong. Now, it's a worker placement game, essentially, and what you're doing is that you're in this fantasy world of anthropomorphic creatures, and you're vying for the favour of the radiant phoenix who lives in this palace here in the centre of the board, and it's got a lovely little rotating board which enters into the gameplay as well. You have a clan of these creatures and a certain number of these tiles. These are called your kin, and you can get more during the game, and you'll be placing those on all of these various spots on the board in an attempt to not only use their special abilities, but use the special abilities of the particular areas in the board. And you're doing this in order to get yourself moon shards, which are these little counters here. And if you can get certain sets of those, you can trade them for favour points at the end of the game, and the person with the most favour points is the winner. Now, this is a 2 to 4 player game. It's competitive, but there is a cooperative mode as well. And then there are also some variants. You can bring some special abilities of the palace more into play if you'd like to. There's a team versus team mode as well, and some other variants. The game is played over 3 rounds, each of which consists of 3 phases. There are 2 main phases and then a little clean-up phase. The first phase is the daytime phase, then there's a nighttime phase, and then there's a short dawn phase. Now, that's right, there is only 3 rounds, so this is a pretty short game, and there are so many things you can do in that short period of time. So a big aspect of the game is maximizing your decisions during that short game time. Now, when you kick off the daytime phase, the first thing you do is draw some of these event cards, and you'll draw these out on these spaces here, and they're going to be the event cards for the round. Now, you can actually purchase these event cards later on, but the ones that aren't purchased will be affecting everybody at the end of the round. So it's a good idea to read those straight away and get to know them. Then, starting with the first player and proceeding clockwise, each player takes a turn. This is where you can place your kin, and your kin can go on any available space on the board or on the Phoenix Palace itself. There are all the individual spots around the outside, but on the Phoenix Palace there is a space for each one of the different coloured kin. Obviously, so if we have it set up for 2 players, we only have 2 of those colours. So if I've got these light purple ones, I'll be placing them on the palace in their light purple spot. But otherwise, I've got a lot of choice about where I place my kin. And not only do I have a choice about where to place them, but I have a choice about how to place them. I can either place them unveiled, which means I actually show what they are when I place them, in which case I can use their special ability for that particular type of kin. Or I can choose to spend one of my gold resources and place it cloaked. Now, I'll tell you what unveiled and cloaked means a little bit later. If you're placing them in the Phoenix Palace, you can only place them unveiled, but you don't get to use their special ability. The next part of this phase is the daytime effect, and that is the effect of the place where you've placed your kin. You get to use that. I'll go through those a little bit later, but if you place them in the Phoenix Palace, you have a choice of 2 things for your daytime effect. One of them is to gain 1 resource of any kind, and you've got these lanterns and scrolls and coins, and then you rotate the palace 1 sector clockwise. The other option is to use one of the daytime effects of one of the highlighted sectors. And when I say highlighted, I mean that is there are 3 areas of the central spinning palace that are highlighted at a time. So you can choose which one of those sectors you use the daytime effect from, and then you can rotate the board 1 sector clockwise. Then we move on to the nighttime phase, and the first thing we do is resolve those event cards that I mentioned earlier. Any of those that haven't been taken get resolved, and they affect everybody, even if you haven't placed a kin in that particular event sector. The second part of the phase is the nighttime rewards scoring. You go through each of the sectors where there are kin present, and everyone who is in that sector gets the nighttime bonus of that sector. The person who has the majority in that sector also gets the majority bonus. Now, when you're counting up for the majority bonus, that's where the unveiled and cloaked facing of your kin kicks in. Because if they're unveiled, you get 1 point towards the majority scoring, and if they're cloaked, you get 2 points towards the majority scoring. Now, keep in mind, special abilities can allow you to hit other kin and force them off the board. If they're unveiled, this kicks them off and they move to the palace instead. However, if they're cloaked and they're kicked, they get turned over to the unveiled side, so they're harder to get off the board and into the palace area. After you've checked all the sectors for their nighttime rewards, you do the same for the palace as well, counting up the influence you have in that area. Again, everyone there gets the nighttime reward, and the person with the majority gets the majority bonus. And finally, there's a dawn phase. And usually you just take your kin back into your hand, but if this is the third round, that's the end of the game, so you go straight to the scoring phase. And for this end game scoring, you're counting up the moon shards you've got. You get points for whether you have a set of them of a different colour, a set of them of the same colour, individual moon shards. It's all about the moon shards, and they give you favour points, and the person with the most wins the game. Let's have a quick run through of what the effects in the different areas of the boards do. This one is the gates area. Here you can gain a lantern and you can get rid of one of these event cards. Now, as I said at the start of the night phase, we're going to be resolving any cards that aren't discarded from this section. So you might have to go here and get rid of some cards, or alternatively leave them there so they affect other players in a way that's beneficial to you. Then we've got the capital sector, and here is basically a first player marker arrangement. So you can get yourself to the head of the queue when it comes to the first player, and you can grab a couple of scrolls while you're there. This next sector is called the Rim. You have some village tiles here and a pioneer token. In a two-player game, the first village is already set up. When you go here, you can move your pioneer token forward, and you can also choose to build another village as you go along, build another tile. And you do that by paying the resources here. You get this amount of fame, and then you place down another tile. Alternatively, you can just move 2 steps forward. This is kind of linked to the next sector, which is called the Shrine. And in this one, you can choose to move 1 step forward. For example, if you're here, you can move to there. And then you can gather the resources from any tile that you're on or any of the ones behind it. So there's a lot of choice here for getting resources. Now, at the start of the game, the Shrine tile is placed here. When you get to the Shrine and you build this Shrine, you turn it over, and you can move on to this, and then you can use this ability here, which allows you to trade any resource for a moon shard of your choice. At the Springs, we've got Revelation cards, a new type of card that you can take to get special abilities, or you can discard them immediately for favour points. And finally, the Clan Houses, where you can get yourself new kin. So you can reveal new kin from the stack here, and then you can buy them for resources. As I mentioned, the kin have all kinds of interesting special abilities that shake up the gameplay as well. So, Ryozen. Well, I think it's kind of weird that Tabula Games isn't more well known in the gaming community. Well, as far as I can tell anyway. Miss Thea and Ikeon and Sons of Faeriel have done fine in their Kickstarters, and they're obviously doing pretty well as a company, but I just think that there should be a little bit more buzz about some of these games because they're really, really good. Now, this one, Ryozen, is obviously geared towards a wider audience. It's got a more family-friendly theme with the anthropomorphic animals and the medieval Japanese feel. To me, the theme is a little bit light and a bit sort of general and, you know, not as mysterious and fascinating as the themes of the earlier games, especially Miss Thea and Ikeon, which I found had a very, really unusual feel in their theme, which interlinked very, very closely with the mechanics and just gave the whole game's very mysterious and attractive kind of feel that I enjoy playing. There's something really original about them. This one doesn't feel quite so original because that theme is a bit more generic. And let's face it, the mechanics are a little bit more generic as well. It's a worker placement game. Yes, the central palace spins round and allows you to do some different effects depending on the ways it's facing and things like that. But when it comes down to it, it's pretty straightforward. However, I think it's the interlocking of the elements that they have here that make this game interesting and fun. Now, Ryozen can be a little bit confusing when you first tackle it. The rulebook is not very good. They don't do very good rulebooks for some reason. They're somewhat confusing and just make the game seem a lot more complicated than they actually are. So my first tries at Ryozen, I just thought, oh, what's going on? There's a lot of stuff going on here and I can't quite get my head around it. But after a few games, something clicked and it all just seemed a lot simpler than I initially thought, and it flows quite nicely. I mean, there's really not much going on here. You basically play one of your kin to a spot and you get an effect from that spot, and you might get an effect from the kin itself. And then after everybody has placed their kin, you see who's got the majority in each of the sectors, and you get some stuff for that as well. That's basically what it comes down to. However, there are just heaps of interesting choices here. It's deciding whether you put your kin down cloaked or unveiled. So whether you're going to go for that extra influence in the sector so you can get the nighttime effect benefits, or whether you're going to go for less influence but be able to use the special effect of the kin. These are really nice, tasty little choices. There are lots of times you find yourself short of resources and you have to do something that gets you resources, and it can be frustrating, but those majorities are really important. So you want to make sure you try and get a majority in a space so you can get those shards at the end and the nighttime effect. If you play things right, you can get nice little combo knock-on effects happening. So you could play a kin to get its special ability, which should allow you to get some more resources, and then you can spend those resources to do something else. So it's not a case of just every time you place a kin, you do one thing and that's it. Sometimes it can have a knock-on and allow you to do other stuff as well. There's also tricky little things about, when you're going for majority, that if you have tie majority, of course, the first player wins that majority. So you also want to allow to get to that space where you can get the first player marker. And if somebody else gets it, it's frustrating, but there are other options, because you can use the palace and use the daytime effect of any of the 3 sectors that are highlighted from the palace. So you might get a chance to, grab the first player marker by using that effect. So while there are lots and lots of choices, you never really feel like you're absolutely hemmed in. It happens a little bit more in the 2-player game, of course. There's less spaces and there's more competition for those limited spaces. But there's always something to do, and if there's nothing to do, you can always go to the palace and get yourself a resource and still maybe use one of the daytime abilities from the highlighted sectors. So you never feel like, oh, I've got nothing to do with this kin. There are also lots and lots of options with this game. Now, this is the Kickstarter edition with all the extras, so I'm not 100% sure what's going to come in a retail edition. I'm assuming there's going to be a retail edition. Certainly you won't get all the lovely plastic pieces. I think it just comes with cardboard tokens and stuff. But certainly in this edition, if you can get your hands on it, it's got these lovely extras. So the base game is, of course, competitive, but there's a cooperative mode where you all play against a character called the Basilisk, which is a game AI. There are also really nice variants. Instead of the palace just being a glorified round marker in the middle, you can actually have a variant where each of the 3 levels of the palace do slightly different things, which is really nice. It gives a little bit more. You start with the palace fully built, and it gives more options to placing in the palace, which is very cool. There's also a semi-co-op variant called the Dragon Rules. And this has a little dragon. It moves around the outside of the board, and basically it's got a certain strength. And if you can beat that strength, well, influence, if you can beat that influence with your combined influence, well, then the shard rewards are increased for the sectors that it's next to. However, if you can't beat it for that round, then you won't be able to score any shards at all from those 2 sectors. So this makes it even more interesting, because there are those sectors which you're kind of avoiding. You want to go there to get those extra shards, but also you don't want to get there and find that you haven't all cooperated enough to get the strength to beat the dragon, and thus no one gets anything. Very, very nice mechanic there. And actually, I think playing with the expanded palace rules and the dragon is a really nice way to make it even more interesting. When it comes to things I don't like, well, I've already mentioned I find the theme a little bit generic and not as interesting as their previous games, but I think this will be a pro for most people. They'll be very happy with the theme. It's more family friendly, it's more approachable. The rulebook, as I said, could do with more work. And in fact, the graphic design overall is really, really nice, but it's just missing that little bit of refinement in the typography and some of the design choices. I think a lighter touch would have been a bit nicer. They tend to do rule books which are a very full colour with reversed out type, and it's all a bit heavy. I think in general, just to pull back on the colours and just have a lighter touch in the graphic design would have gone with this theme a bit nicer in my opinion. But still, it does look good, and certainly the edition with all the plastic pieces and everything is gorgeous. It's got very nice insert with spaces for everything. You don't have to take apart the tower each time you pack it away. There's spaces for that as well. Yeah, certainly this deluxe edition is the way to go if you can find yourself a copy. The other big elephant in the room is the fact that it is only 3 rounds. It's quite a short game. You can probably get a couple of games in an evening very easily with space for another short one. I think that it adds a certain tension to the game. It's also slightly frustrating as well because there are so many choices. You find yourself wanting to have just a couple more rounds, or at least just one more round, you know, because when you're getting extra workers, for example, or extra kin, you find yourself not so much getting them, certainly halfway through the last round, they're kind of useless. And you just feel like you could build up a little bit more of an engine to do more interesting things if you had a bit more time. But then the game might drag a little bit if that happened. I don't know. But what they've gone for is a pretty short, snappy time. It says 45 to 90 minutes. And yeah, I kind of respect that choice because they've said, right, this is fun, let's get in, let's play 3 rounds, do interesting things, score it up, see who wins. That's the game. It's not something you're going to sit on for hours and hours. And I think that probably it's a good decision in the long run. But for some people, it'll be a pro. For some people, that'll be a con. So that's it, folks. Ryozen by Tabula Games. I think it's Tabula Games. Tabula Games? It's Tabula Rasa. Tabula Rasa. It's probably Tabula Games. I've probably got that completely wrong. It's one of those words I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce. I must be honest. Anyway, they do make some lovely games. I do recommend that you go and check out some of their past games as well. They've got another one coming as well, which I'm going to be covering on this channel when it comes out. And I just like supporting their games because they're kind of interesting and they straddle really nicely that line between theme and kind of Euro mechanics, which I sometimes like to play in. I don't like to go too far Euro. I like to go really far theme. But, you know, if I am playing something Euro-like, I like it to have a good theme. And they do that very, very well, especially in their earlier games. But this one has a wider audience, I think, for it. And it's worth checking out. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. This is the Esoteric Order of Gamers. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit all notifications, not only on the thing here on your app, but also in your device so you get your notifications. I've got a Patreon channel if you ever want to support the Esoteric Order of Gamers, which has been going for over 12 years. 12 years? Yeah, over 12 years now. I've been going for a long, long time. And I really, really appreciate those wonderful people who choose to put their hand in their pocket and support my work. Not only all my video work, but of course, my hundreds and hundreds of rule summaries and reference that are available on my website at orderofgamers.com. Go and check it out. I will see you next time. Bye for now.